MLS Aces Podcast, episode 322. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. I'm joined again by Jason Vivang, not by Jason Vivang, but Jason. We are at the pinnacle of the MLS offseason. We're at the highest of all heights, the most excitement we're probably going to have for every single team in Major League Soccer, and there is now 30 of them. Last week, you picked that you wanted to preview the Western Conference first, so are you ready to go through
I am
15
ready. I'm
Western
excited
Conference
for it.
Hey,
everyone's at 0 points right now.
Everyone's on an equal playing ground for sure. Look, but it's true, right? This is the point where if you have a team that even if you don't think are going to win a trophy, you can have the most excitement, what ifs, who's going to step up, who's not, all that fun stuff, right? And,
well, I like I was like struggling with my predictions too for the standings.
Yeah.
And then I realized every time we predict, we maybe get one or two correct. So why is it even like? Why do I have to struggle with it?
Just no, you don't stress.
Feelings.
Look, my goal every year, and I haven't said this on the podcast or to you. My goal: get 3 correct in one conference. Like I want like 3 picks right at the end of the year, where I'm like, okay, I was generally right about this team. So that's my goal.
I think I'm gonna look back. 2023, I got Chicago correct, Minnesota correct, and I got one off. Which I count as like
one off is a win for me. Like that's a win. So
basically I get 1 correct from each conference so far, the years we've done it, or the years we've at least
recorded it.
Yeah, recorded it. And then I'm like close on 1 or 2.
Exactly. But if you are, I don't care if you're Matt Doyle, I don't care if you're Tom Bogert, I don't care if you're Jason Vivang. If you make a pick preseason and you get roughly 3 or 4 in a general area of each other by the end of the season, I think that's good. And whoever does it, I give you a bunch of credit. So that's how I feel about it. So we are not really gonna do much more conversation here because we do have 15 teams to get through. The only thing that I do just want to say is we're doing well. We have still had our 2 episodes a week. We have seen reviews go up. I'll give an update on the subscriber and review and all that stuff probably next week. But the one thing that I do would just want to say, we had an interview earlier this week with Mark Fishkin of the Seeing Red podcast, one of the OG podcasts in U.S. soccer. They always do a great job. But the one thing that I do just want to say is, obviously, if you guys follow the Seeing Red podcast, Mark did lose his co-host of the podcast, Joe Goldstein, who lost his battle with cancer. Just our thoughts, prayers go out to the Seeing Red pod, Mark, Joe, his family, all that. If you're not really in the New York, New Jersey area and you don't know what the Seeing Red podcast is, you may not know who Joe is, but Joe's impact with the Red Bull organization, fans and everything like that is pretty big and large. So just want to throw that out there as a rest in peace to Joe. And, we are thinking of you from the other MLS podcasts out there going on. Now, crappy transition away from death to, previewing the league and previewing a specific conference, but we are going to go through all 15 teams. I went through this, Jason, and I ordered it differently. Normally we do alphabetically, but I'm going to do it backwards from how these Western Conference teams finished in 2024. I liked it. A little bit of a switch.
I picked up on that.
So I'm trying to be a little bit different, a little creative this year with we do it. So obviously with that, are the reigning 2024 MLS Cup champion LA Galaxy. Obviously, Greg Vanney coming back as manager for his 5th season in charge of the club. Some key players that the team brought in this winter: Maya Yoshida on a re-sign, Christian Ramirez from Columbus, Zanka from Anderlecht, Lucas Sanabria as a U22 initiative defensive midfielder from Nacional. The club also sent out Dejan Joveljic to Sporting Kansas City in the first ever cash for player trade. Marky Delgado went to the other side of LA. Jalen Neal traded to CF Montreal, and Gaston Brugman, 2024 MLS Cup MVP, went to Nashville. Now, Jason, I think we should obviously start with The Galaxy are tough. There's a lot of things we can start, but I want to start with the star players on the field that we're going to see. Gabriel Peck, Joseph Paintsil. Obviously, Paintsil out for a few weeks, but he's going to be around for a majority of the season. Marco Royce. I'm going to even go down the list of an Edwin Cerrillo, Mickey Yamane, Christian Ramirez. Who are two guys, a guy, whatever you want to go with here that you're like, this is the star. This is the guy that if you don't know the LA Galaxy, you should be watching every single week.
I mean, I think like the guys, if we're obviously removing Puig from this because of his injury, and personally, like I think the hope is he comes back this season. But I think like the guys that really helped carry this team outside, Jovic with his 15 goals, who's now moving on. You have Peck and Paintsil on the wings, and those guys are going to be crucial once again this season, especially even more so now, I think, without Puig, with the new number 9 and Christian Ramirez coming in. I think it's kind of up to those guys to try and continue to perform at the high level that, they can. Paintsil, he'll probably miss the first 4 weeks of the season. I think for the Galaxy, my thoughts for them is like, how do they stay towards the top? I think this team is still clearly talented, but injuries and, the salary issues that had them lose a couple players, it sucks. It's just kind of the reality of getting to MLS Cup, I guess.
It's reality of winning MLS Cup.
Yeah. So it is what it is, but I think this team's good enough to continue to compete. And if they can get Puig back, this is another, it's the same, it's a similar team. It's basically the same team. I like the Sanabria, him coming in. I like Zonka coming in, a couple players that can help that defense because, I personally am still like the defense is the question mark for me, less so than it probably was last year. But I think going into this year, it's going to be a little bit harder to just outscore everyone and score 60-plus goals on the season if Puig is out for the whole year without Jovic in the team anymore. And I like Christian Ramirez as a nice replacement striker, but I don't know. We'll see. I have a little bit to say about him later, but yeah.
Later on, okay. I'm that's a little teaser.
In 5 minutes, 2 minutes, maybe.
Well, look, the you hit the nail on the head with Paintsil, Peck, and Ramirez, right? Those are going to be, I think, the trusted 3 to keep the Galaxy towards the top of the West. I don't think this is a team that needs to honestly contend in the Supporter Shield or even contend for first place in the Western Conference. I don't think that's where they should be. I think they should be probably trying to finish top 4 in the West, have a home playoff game and make a run at MLS Cup if and when Ricky Puig is back, right? I think that is the formula for success.
I don't think this is Supporter Shield aspirations at all. I think it's MLS
again,
Cup aspirations again, but
exactly, which sure, that's totally fine. And I think you mentioned the defense. I actually have a little bit more faith in the defense than what I was going in last year with.
I totally agree. I think they're better than last year. It's just still
it's just, to me, it's only because of Carlos Garces, Emilio Garces, whatever his first name he goes by. I apologize, but he was a complete shot in the arm, adrenaline shot for this back line. He is the reason why Jalen Neal got traded. And now you have a Zonka there, a guy who has played at the World Cup in Euros. You have a Maya Yoshida there who has played at some of the biggest leagues in the world, has played a ton for Japan in his career. You have veteran center backs there next to a young center back that could arguably be the best center back in the league by the end of 2025. That has me excited. So this is a good team. This is a team that is going to compete, and obviously a team that is going to be playing in MLS, in CONCACAF Champions Cup soon enough, within the next few weeks, right? And then Leagues Cup as well. So Jason, how does this team potentially win another MLS Cup in your eyes?
I think the mold is just continue to compete, which they're going to do. And I don't want to say tread water because it sounds bad. It sounds like it's worse than it is because this team is still really good, but it's sort of they're just waiting till they can get in Puig back. And I think that's the biggest thing. One of the things I wanted to mention is like they have Elijah Winder, Isaiah Parente, and Ruben Ramos, all who were like, I want to say under 22 at this point.
Yeah, super young midfield talent.
All three of them, I think, at least will have to perform some role in this team, especially because Marco Reus is 35.
Mm-hmm.
I think Marco Reus will be the regular starter. But if they can just get out of those three, if one of them can get to a starter level or like every game type
by committee, this is by committee central midfield.
I don't know. I think that central midfield, it's less of like, oh, they're all young players, but what can they bring? What can they kind of come in and give to this team? There's a good team built around them. Just because they're young, we've seen young players kind of take off in the league before. Can one of them take off and be that, extra chess piece or whatever? I think possible.
No, I agree with you. And the next question I was going to ask is kind of who steps up for Ricky Push if he's going to miss most, if not all, of 2025. I think the obvious answer is the Marco Reus piece that you mentioned. His return in the amount of games he played last year was great, but we know his age, we know his injury history, and that is something that I do think you have to rely upon a younger midfield. And the three names that you mentioned there, even a Lucas Sanabria coming in on a U22 deal, he's going to have to eat up a lot of minutes. Especially probably Diego Fagundes sliding into the midfield at points when Joseph Paintsel gets back. There's going to have to be a lot of minutes eaten up for Marco Reus, I think, to play his game and be the push replacement. So
you want Reus to be at his best, and to get that, I think you have to give him his time off, I guess, a little bit, because there are 3 competitions that this team is competing in. Obviously, Champions Cup is just like a massive competition that I'm sure they're going to take very seriously. They're going to need minutes from a lot of these younger players, and it's up to Greg Vanney, honestly, to get the most out of them.
So I guess my question and my final question for you around the Galaxy, Jason, who is the player on this roster that is under the radar? Again, we know the Pecks, we know the Paintsels, we know the 20-plus goal contributors of them, but who is the guy under the radar on this roster that you think makes the difference for this team to be successful in 2025?
Yeah, so for me, like when I went into this question for each team, it was less like who's not really known, but I don't know if under the radar is like my take on it, but if I were to pick like an under the radar guy, I might say like Elijah Winder, just because coming from Louisville, the like ability I think is there. It's just up to him to kind of take that leap. But I think like Christian Ramirez would be my guy to be like this is what's going to make this team kind of go and be somewhat what they were last year. And that's because just last season, he had 27 games played, 9 goals and 4 assists. That's in comparison to Jovic, who they lost, who had 15 goals and 5 assists in 28 games. So obviously that was much better than Ramirez. But can Ramirez give a few more goals, a few more assists playing with Paintsel and Peck around him, with Reus behind him? Yeah. Is there a world where Christian Ramirez can kind of like, I don't know if dial back the clock is the necessary term, but like maybe go back a few years and hit 12 goals? I think if he gets 12 goals on the season, maybe you get some more contributions out of Miguel Berry. Maybe they still bring in another striker. I don't know. It's probably unlikely at this point, maybe in the summer, but yeah.
I agree with the Ramirez shout. He's a very versatile forward, a very versatile striker, and I think Paintsel, Peck, Fagundes, Reus will give him the opportunity to score, and he just has to put it away, which we've seen him do. We've seen him do it for Columbus. We've seen him do it for Minnesota. We've seen him do it pretty much at most spots in his career. I think there's 1 or 2 clubs that it didn't really work out with, but I'm going to say less him, more system.
The players around him now will give him easy chances.
Exactly. I agree with you there. The one player that I would just say is under the radar, and you mentioned him, is Elijah Winder, right? He's the record USL championship to MLS fee right, paid by an MLS club to bring a player in. Obviously, the name is there. His brother was the big signing that went to Benfica not too long ago. And there's a lot of hype around him around this preseason. He is a guy that I think can eat up minutes, will eat up minutes. Apparently, there was some European interest around him. He wanted to go to the Galaxy. So I think Elijah Winder by the end of the year could be a guy that if the Galaxy are successful and playing well and, in the top of the West picture, people are pointing at Elijah Winder as a kid who's like, yeah, he's a big reason as to why. Okay, moving on. Because we have to touch every team, right?
Yeah, we're already too slow, huh?
I know, exactly, right? It's expected. Seattle Sounders, Brian Schmetzer is heading into his 9th full season as manager, which is kind of wild that he's been around this long when I was looking up some of this stuff. But some key players coming in this winter, trading for Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola from FC Dallas. They re-signed Joao Paulo, Albert Rusnak, Jean Bell. And they also, we didn't really talk about this on the podcast, Jason, but sneaky bringing back in a free agent signing Kim Ki-hee, shout out. Kim Ki-hee, for fun facts, was Korean First Division Team of the Season last year. So shout out him at like 35 doing it. Some key players out this winter, Raul Ruiz-Diaz and Nathan leaving via free agency. Leo Chu was traded to FC Dallas. Jason, this Sounders roster, obviously stacked, deep, talented. Anything that you want to say about this roster, but when you're looking at it, who is the star or stars that will make this team what I'm going to predict successful in 2025?
I think for this team, like the biggest thing is they have 4 competitions, right? Out of all the MLS teams, I think that I'm in Miami. You're probably the only ones with 4. So, and we know the problems that have plagued this specific Seattle team in the past are injuries. And so my biggest thing is prioritize the competitions that they want to do well in. And whether that is the Club World Cup or not, just set a priority, whatever.
You nailed it.
For these competitions, because if they're going 100% in all of these, and I do think this team has depth, right? Bringing in Paul Arriola, bringing in Jesus Ferreira, Paul Rothrock. Like, there's a lot of depth on this team across the board. Kim Ki-hee even. But
this team is too deep at every position, in my opinion. But
I mean, I don't know if it's too deep because they have 4 competitions. They're really going to need to rely on that depth.
I meant 2 players deep, like at each position. I think you can sub in the backup to be the starter if you
could almost make a second 11. Yeah, yes. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
thank you.
But my biggest thing is health on this team, and I think specifically, and this kind of goes with like the player I'm watching, which is a star for me for this one, is Pedro de la Vega, because I think it's time for him to operate at the level he should be at, right? I think it's time for him to play at a DP level. It's time to when he's healthy, you can see the talent. And I think it just stay healthy, play as much of the games as you can. I don't think that should be all of them. Again, I think they should prioritize what they want. Whether they kind of take off the Club World Cup, I'm fine with it. Their group is brutal. It's smack dab in the middle of the season. They're going to be playing probably 5 games in 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, and no one's expecting them to do anything in the Club World Cup, so fair.
I would love for them to get a win versus PSG, but at the same time, I think we're looking at a team that if they want to win a trophy in 2025, they have to put their players' health. And by doing that, they have to prioritize what they want to do well in. If that's Supporter Shield, then they have to go all in on MLS season. If that's MLS Cup, maybe you don't need that 1 seed. I don't know. Maybe it's CONCACAF Champions Cup and the MLS Cup. I don't know. But I just think they have to decide, because getting hurt destroys their season, as it has a little bit.
They are, again, like you said, with Miami in prime position to unfortunately have the most wear and tear on their players' legs. It is crazy that this team has not won a trophy since the 2022 season with how talented and the reputation that they do have. And I agree that I think prioritizing the tournaments that they play in is going to be the key to them winning a trophy again, Jason. I completely agree with that point. I'm going to go back to a player that you just mentioned before, though, is Pedro de la Vega. If he produces like the $7 million signing that I think everyone was predicting before he came in last season, this team is winning a trophy. This team can win CONCACAF Champions Cup. This team can win MLS Cup. This team can win most competitions that they're playing in if he produces as that expected DP player. Because I'm going to say they have another maybe 2-3 guys on this roster who aren't DP contracted players, but I think are DP level players, right? So this is maybe one of the deepest teams.
I mean, they have Ferreira as their striker, a problem, like a position of problem for them going back to last year, and now they just bring in Ferreira in non-DP contract. Like that's free real estate right there.
100%, 100%. And I think, it's fair to say that this team has enough to withstand playing in the 4 competitions that they're going to be in if they, like, to your point, do it right. If they make sure that, Paul Rothrock is maybe getting a run in Leagues Cup because Jordan Morris was just the dude running out there for the FIFA Club World Cup and Champions Cup and MLS action and everything like that. But Jason, who is a player that is on this roster right now that you feel like is, however we want to say it, under the radar, maybe a name that we're not specifically talking about, that is a key to this team's success in 2025?
I mean, I think personally, like my Pedro de la Vega was kind of mine.
Okay.
He's not obviously under the radar, but I think personally, I just need him to perform for this team to be good. If I were to pick under the radar, maybe Joao Paulo or Obed Vargas, someone in the midfield who's played consistent minutes before and has been in this team for a while.
And who's going to have to play a bunch of minutes though again?
Well, I'm assuming this midfield, like Rusnak, Roldan, Atencio, Vargas, Joao Paulo, like they're all going to be getting minutes every week, whether that's in
different positions.
Yeah, and they're going to be rotated. It's just they're going to. I guess the under the radars, the whole midfield needs to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, no,
stay healthy.
It's fair, right? And this is a team that had a league-leading defense last year, and they're bringing back all 4 starters and their keeper in net and the lower block central midfield pairing. So to me, it's like the defense is not the under the radar piece here. It's what we saw them struggle with, and the reason why they got eliminated from MLS Cup was who's going to put the ball in the back of the net. And I think they've answered those questions, and we've talked about the Pedro de la Vega piece, so I'm not going to harp on that. But to me, it's like, who else is going to eat up those minutes in the attack? I went with Paulie Rothrock. He I think developed as his own little star in the Sounders community last year, and that's great. That's fun. I loved it. I love the nicknames, Paulie Prime Time and all that stuff. But if the Sounders want to be good, they need their depth to produce as well. I'd like to see Paul Rothrock consistently play at a good level all season long across multiple competitions, given the opportunity to start. That's where I see maybe an under the radar move. Jason, LAFC, our next team here. Steve Cherundolo's 4th season as manager of this club. This team, a lot of turnover. They were able to re-sign Aaron Long, Hugo Lloris, Sergi Palencia, Eddie Segura, and Marlon. They did bring in some free agents, Jeremy Abobasi, Yaya Boa. They traded for Nkosi Defari and Marky Delgado. They brought in midfielders from Europe and an Odin Holm and an Igor Jesus. But this team also did lose a lot of key pieces. Jesus Murillo, Ilie Sanchez, Kai Kamara, Edward Atuesta, Luis O'Brien, Omar Campos, Mateus Bogush. A lot of names there, but I think that is a representation of the talent coming in, but also the talent that has left this group and the talent that won a U.S. Open Cup in 2024. Obviously, the big question mark is maybe the when of an Antoine Griezmann coming in. But if we currently look at the roster as is, you still have Denny Bouanga. You still have a Ryan Hollingshead who is leading the way. You still have Christian Oliveira, Aaron Long, and Olivier Giroud up top for his first full season of MLS action. But Jason, where does your eyes go when you look at this roster or you think about this LAFC team?
I mean, I think this team, I think for Giroud specifically, he can look to his sides and see some consistency in the team from the past year. He also gets an off season. I think one of the bigger issues with this team was the Giroud coming in and really not living up to what we kind of thought he could be. And I think what they wanted, I personally think just the U.S. Open Cup trophy last year was maybe that was considered a failure of a season for that team.
Wow, you're going with the failure conversation, not me.
I am bringing it up because I think they're not happy with that. I get that they lost a lot of pretty big pieces, but I personally think they filled the holes of what they lost one way or another in maybe not a better way across the board, but in ways that plug the holes that they lost.
Okay.
Like bringing in Marky Delgado. I mean, I think it's hard to replace Bogusz in what he did. But you're bringing in a guy, I guess, maybe that's for Ilie Sanchez. But you're bringing in a Marky Delgado who won MLS Cup last season with the Galaxy. You're also taking, and I think one of the more underrated pieces here is a couple of these players they kind of took from rivals and just weakened those teams a little bit. I mean, we just talked about the Galaxy, but I think losing Marky Delgado for them hurts them a lot. And I think him just going to, 20 miles away to LAFC is massive for LAFC because they get this guy who now this is the team that they competed with for the whole year. They kind of have an insider knowledge on what Greg Banny likes and whatnot. I think for me, this team, their goal is to win another trophy, as it always is. I think they have the talent to do it, though, regardless of what they lost. I think you bring in like a Bobasi for Kai Kamara, right? That probably a younger, probably a better,
it's
reserve.
An upgrade. It's an upgrade.
Yeah, reserve strike. Hey, I love Kai, so I just don't want to.
Yes, but an in prime Jeremy Abobasi, I think.
You bring in Marky Delgado. I love the Yaoyaboa signing. I think that whether that's going to be a depth piece, whether that's going to be a piece to use in their different competitions, because again, all these teams have a lot of games, or whether he
such versatility.
Yeah, and whether he even starts some of these games in the MLS season, which I think he probably will get some starter minutes.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I think the starting wingback pair is Hollingshead and Palencia. But if you need Hollingshead to bounce over to right wingback because Palencia needs a game off, you're subbing in a dude who scored an MLS Cup 2 years ago from the left wingback position. If you need Yaoyaboa and Sergi Palencia starting, you can also do that. It offers the thing that I think I was concerned with this team losing in Omar Campos when he left was okay, Ryan Hollingshead is the dude that's just kind of playing all over the field for LAFC, but the only reason why he could do that was because Omar Campos was on this team, a super talented young left wing back. And Yaoyaboa, I think Omar Campos probably a better player, but Yaoyaboa experienced seasoned MLS vet. So I went on a whole wing back rant there, but I think it's a key piece.
I think the key is the wingbacks and then the actual true wingers that they have. Because you look at the left side, you have Bouanga, and then you have Hollingshead. Maybe it's Yaoyaboa. And the right side, you have Christian Oliveira and Sergi Palencia. The sides of the fields are dominant for LAFC. And I think if they want to work the ball up those sides and use their, we've seen a lot from this team under Cherundolo of that quick hit you on the break, get Dennis Bouanga out into the wing, with the ball, leading him forward behind the defense, and good things happen. And I think that is sort of the model here. And you have built the sides of your field like Superman.
Do you have concerns though with what Cherundolo, I think, primarily was not forcing, but I think what he was primarily trying to play tactically in 2024, where I think we saw some issues with it, maybe not the best soccer always from this LAFC team, and then maybe not the best soccer tactically mixed with Olivier Giroud. Do you think you have concerns for that in 2025, or do you think it's an off season, Giroud can rest up and they'll figure it all out?
it wasn't the most beautiful like it was maybe a couple years ago when they went to MLS Cup and we were like, this is a crazy chess match.
Yeah.
But I do think partially why Giroud wasn't good last year was simply because he came in mid-season and wasn't maybe. I mean, we've seen players from Europe struggle a lot in that first season, especially ones who are towards the latter part of their career, like a Giroud is, who come in and are like, oh, you're traveling 8 hours or something to get all the way across the country.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make an excuse for him. I just think having this off season, having a whole off season to prepare, to kind of figure out what they want to do, how they want to use him is crucial to his own ability in this season. So for me, like I think Giroud will have a better like I would be willing to put money on him having a better season than last year. I think LAFC
It's
will
not
be
hard. Better is not a hard.
Yeah, I mean it was a rough start, but
Yes.
I think he should be much better. I think the team itself, has, like I said, kind of filled in the holes that they needed to fill. And yeah, I mean, maybe they do get a Griezmann in the summer, and we're just like, okay,
Back
maybe
in the
he
MLS Cup
fits
conversation.
in France MLS team.
Hey, that's it, right? They're the former World Cup champion MLS team. Who is an under the radar player for you?
Under
for
the
this
player.
team? I'll go first in the sense of I was bouncing back and forth between two. Jeremy Abobasi, just because kind of what we mentioned of he's gonna play the Kai Kamara role. I think he's gonna get a lot of minutes, whether it's off the bench, and he's gonna start a bunch of games. But to me, the under the radar player is Nkosi Tafari. It's a big center back addition. Cherundolo, like we said last year, liked to play a lot of three in the back. Marlon is still on this team, but I'm pretty sure it's a 6-month contract. He'll be gone in the summer potentially. So Nkosi Tafari 2 years ago in 2023, I thought arguably top 5 center back in the league. Last year took a massive step back. Dallas wasn't great, so I'm not going to hold that too much against him. But I think coming in and potentially playing alongside a Marlon and Aaron Long and Eddie Segura, Maxime Chanot, Nkosi Tafari could completely bounce back onto the scene in 2025. So I think he could be a big addition to this defense. Jason, but who is your pick for that spot, I guess?
I like the Abobasi pick because I think we're going to see at least 30 minutes from him pretty much every game.
If not more, for sure.
I picked Marky Delgado just because I think him coming in there, he's going to be asked to do a lot immediately, especially because they had Ilie Sanchez or Bogusz or whoever you want to say as he's sort of replacing. Maybe it's a bit of both. They're going to need a lot out of him in that midfield. That midfield also was, I feel like, one of the more stapled in midfields that we had for multiple years with Ilie, with Tillman. And so he's going to kind of have to come in there and find his footing pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's funny. I view Abobasi as the Bogusz replacement because Bogusz, I mean, he was like 20 goal contributions across all comps, and he played a false 9. He played out on the wing. He played a central midfield, whatever. And then I view Delgado more as like the Atuesta, Lewis O'Brien replacement. But all in all, I think there's a lot of versatile players on this team that are going to have to do a lot of things for the talent that left. And that is what I think I'm going to be keeping an eye on for LAFC in 2025. But let's go to Minnesota United, where we see Eric Ramsey coming in for his second season as manager of the Loons. This winter, the club has re-signed Dane St. Clair, Hassani Dotson, Bongi Halongwe, Tani Olawasi. They brought in South Korean international central midfielder Hoyan Jun. And then they've also brought in U22 initiative center back in Nicholas Romero. And they also this week signed a U22 initiative central midfielder Owen Jean from Amiens SC in Ligue 2 for a reported fee of $2 million. So Minnesota doing a whole lot, really, this offseason. Some key players out, not a ton. Miguel Tapias went to Chivas for a reported $1 million fee, and Timu Puki went back to Europe. This roster, this team, Jason, was, I think, towards the end of the year was playing some of the most fun soccer in all of Major League Soccer. Kelvin Yeboah was an absolute game changer coming over during the summer. Do you think this team has enough under Eric Ramsey in year 2 to compete at the top of the West?
Yeah, and I think partially for me, like this team finished 6th last season with Ramsey coming in like a week before the season started and figuring it out as he went. What he had,
adding 2 DPs in the summer.
Yeah, and him figuring out what he had, what he needed to improve on. I think like you listed Timu Puki as like a key player out this winter. Maybe 2 years ago he was a key player, but I don't want to really put him in the key player category under Eric Ramsey.
Well, there wasn't a lot of players out of.
Well, no, I don't. I'm not saying don't mention him, but I'm just saying like in terms of like an actual quote unquote key player, it's not. They didn't really lose much. I think they've only really gained from this offseason and even all of last season. And I think we've seen what Eric Ramsey can do. He's clearly good at his job. And this team is strong. Like this team starting 11, I think is really, really, really strong. I don't know. I think if injuries happen and stuff like that, obviously it can derail certain parts of their season. And I think Calvin Yeboah could operate at a best 11 striker level. Then, the sky's the limit for this team. Like they've got a great goalie in Dane St. Clair. We haven't mentioned many goalies this pod yet, so I want to give him a shout out because I think he's very solid back there. You have some very experienced guys in your midfield with Robin Laud and Dodson. Dodson might not start, whatever.
Dodson might not be on the team. I will say there is some apparently some unhappy rumors.
I'll be honest, it's not going to change my opinion on this team.
No, I agree. I agree. Especially with the additions of Owen Jean and Ho Young Jung, and obviously Will Trapp still being there. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
My only concern about this team is if Kelvin Yeboah goes down with an injury. I think that in all honesty, you can not replace, but you can have a substitute.
You move Tani up.
you move Tani up, right? You move Sangbin Zhang up. You move Bongi Holongwen up. You have options to even replace Yeboah, but I do think Kelvin Yeboah is a whole different level type of player too. The thing with this team that I absolutely love is the versatility from like 90% of the players on this roster, and Eric Ramsey being able to create a system of that. Like Carlos Harvey was a dude who came in last year from USL Championship, and he was purely a defensive midfielder for the most part. He came in under Ramsey. Now he's a right center back in a back three, and Carlos Harvey was really good towards the end of last year. You have Jefferson Diaz, who came in during the summer, an unknown commodity, and was, again, playing some excellent center back towards the end of last year. The only player that I really I think hasn't succeeded under the additions of Ramsey and Khalid El Ahmad is maybe Joaquin Pereira, who I think, again, you're coming in during the summer. Not every player transitions or translates right away. He could be a stud in 2025. I have a lot of hopes around this team, and the one player that I feel like I keep bringing up is Kelvin Yeboah. But Jason, I personally think he is an MVP contender in 2025. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down some of his stats from last season. He had 9 regular season games, 7 goals, 2 assists. So averaging a goal contribution per game he played during the regular season. That carried on in the playoffs. He had 3 games played, 2 goals, 1 assist in the playoffs. So, you're talking about a guy who in 12 games averaged 12 goals or 12 goal contributions.
Yeah.
If they get 1 goal contribution a game from him alone, this team is definitely talented. Like you said, the team is pretty versatile around him with interchange. I think Eric Ramsey knows clearly what he's doing and what he wants out of his players. I think there's a chance Kelvin Yeboah is over 1 goal contribution a game for the season, and that definitely puts him in that category.
This is a team, Jason, that's playing in MLS, playing in Leagues Cup, playing in US Open Cup. I mentioned it before, but to me, Joaquin Pereira is the dude who I think could shift this team from, they're gonna be in the conversation for 1 title, 1 trophy in 2025, to a dude who can make this team potentially in the conversation for multiple trophies. who is a player for you on this roster? It can be under the radar or not. It's fine either which way. Outside of maybe Kelvin Yeboah.
I haven't really picked under the
radar.
because
I'm also shifting my way of thinking about it too. But the outside of Kelvin Yeboah, because I think he's the obvious, but who is another guy on this roster that you're like, this could make Minnesota just, in the conversation?
I think Bong Huangwei has potential to be like a best 11 right wing back. I think it's clear Eric Ramsey's really high on him. His value really skyrocketed last season, coming in with not really much, knowing what he could do. And he was first choice. He played pretty much every single game, every single minute. Yeah. I think there's a chance he can come into this. He has Tani Oluwaseyi above him, who I really love as a player. I think, obviously, we talked about Kelvin Yeboah. I think he has a chance to solidify himself and actually put up some numbers this year. And if he does, this team's going to be towards the top of the West.
Okay, let's keep it moving. Houston Dynamo FC. Ben Olsen's third season as manager of the club down in Texas. Some key players coming in this winter, re-signing Franco Escobar, Mikael, and Daniel Steris. They also signed Eric Duenas via free agency, and were one of the teams to use that cash for trade, a mechanism this offseason in getting Jack McGlynn in from the Philadelphia Union. Some key players out this winter: Hector Herrera, Steve Clark, Coco Carrasquilla, Sebes Ferreira, and Latif Blessing. So some pretty big names there. Jason, Houston Dynamo under Benny Ball. Ben Olsen has done everything during his time with Houston to get the most out of maybe the not so mainstream names of U.S. soccer. And then at the same exact time, Hector Herrera. At the same exact time, Coco Carrasquilla, right? I still am trying to hold on and believe to the Houston Dynamo way in 2025, but I will say this offseason hurt me a little bit. What are your thoughts right now around Houston?
I think this Houston team is tough to have really strong thoughts on, because it's just what I don't know what we're going to get out of some of these players, right? I think this kind of goes into the other questions of who can be the, under the radar or, player that I think needs to step up. And that for me is Amin Bassi. I think he needs to have a season like he had in 2023, where he had 10 goals and 2 assists, rather than last year where he played 31 games and had 3 goals and 7 assists. Yeah. I think he needs to take a step up. I think the team itself is still talented. You are bringing back essentially one of the best defenses in the entire league from last year. So the team's going to continue to be competitive just from that alone. But you're losing so much in your attack. And I think, like we mentioned, when McGlynn got signed, what can he bring? What can he do to help kind of fill that role? Or like you said, then, this might be a better player in that role for the type of football they want to play. So I think there's a chance this team is good. There's also a chance this team isn't good. It's a tough team for me to predict. I'm really looking at Amin Bassi as someone who I want to see really start being that attacking mid that's providing for everyone. Look, maybe that's not the player he is. I don't know.
No, look, it's fair and it's fine. I think I just want to hammer home one quick point on Jack McGlynn. I think he's going to be a star in 2025 with the Houston Dynamo. I will put the prediction out there now. Dude is going to be best 11 quality central midfielder. I'm saying it. It's out there. Whatever. The defense, like you said, one of the best in all of MLS last year, 100%. Steve Clark's underlying numbers were fantastic. Steve Clark is gone, though. It's Andrew Tarbell's team, and Andrew Tarbell is a veteran backup keeper of Major League Soccer. I am interested to see him step up, or if Houston makes another move to bring in a starting caliber, or even re-sign Steve Clark, because I think he's still out there. But the thing that I'm looking at is who is going to step up around Ezequiel Ponce. Mm-hmm. Even Ezequiel Ponce needs to step up in his own right? Like, he is a DP9. He's the only DP on this roster. He needs to produce as a DP9. And for me, that's 15 plus goals. Like that's around 15 goals in a season. Across all competitions, I think is totally fine. But he needs to score as a DP striker. And then you need one or two of Ibrahim Aliou, Nelson Quinones, and Lawrence Anali to be the Robin to Ponce being Batman, right? Like you need them to, one of those three guys, to be the number 2 scoring option. And because I think that happens, then Amin Bassi gets elevated. Then another winger gets elevated. I think Jack McGlynn then gets elevated because he's trying to break lines and create more from a lower midfield block. Griffin Dorsey, I think, gets elevated at that point too. The attack, I think one or two guys on that front line can really change what Houston looks like by midseason, by end season. So that's what I'm looking at. And I don't know. Do we want to go for under the radar player or your response there?
I just think like the attack is like, we know the defense is good, right? The 39 goals against last season is one of the best in the league. I think it was 3rd or 4th best. Including both conferences. But the goals for are the one that's concerning. So I think, calling out Ponce and being like, I don't even know if 15 goals will do it. They only scored 47 goals last season.
Well, I think you have a striker that's producing at that level, then okay, defenders start paying attention more, and Ponce is going to get a little bit more attention. And then you hope another winger, Bassi, whoever, can then start to create in their own right and get more opportunities.
I think they're running the risk of like and I don't think they're there yet, but I think they're running a risk of like what happened with Nashville, where it's like it just kept relying on defense for so long that the set, like eventually the defense isn't going to operate at a, and maybe that's not this year and maybe that's not next year. But it's a little risky to just be like, we're going to rely on every game being 1-0.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think this is a team, though, that can win the Open Cup. They are playing in Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and MLS this year. Jason, anything else on Houston before we advance?
No.
All right, cool. RSL, Real Salt Lake. Pablo Mastroeni enters his 4th season as manager of the club out in Salt Lake City. This winter, the club has re-signed Javane Brown. They've traded for Elias Manuel. They signed Kobe Henry on loan from Reims B in France. They've signed free agent goalkeeper Rafael Cabral, and they've also signed striker Ariath Piol from the Australian First Division. This team has lost out on a lot of big names, though. Anderson Julio, Christian Arango, Matty Crooks, Gavin Beavers, and Marcelo Silva are all gone. Jason, I'm going to kind of skip right to it here because I feel like this is the biggest piece around RSL. Do you think Diego Luna has enough for him to be the man on this roster? Because I think he has to be for RSL to be successful.
Yeah, and I think RSL is one of the more difficult teams to predict right now, given how much they lost. I do think Diego Luna can step up. Last season, he was 31 games played, 8 goals, 8 assists. That's going to have to be better. I mean, you had Chicho Arango, who had 17 goals and 6 assists last season. But I do think, like, lost in the – I can maybe not lost because I feel like we talk about it a lot, but I don't know if everyone talks about it a lot, is the fact that Arango, like, front-loaded probably 12 or 13 of those goals for the first half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's still goals scored, but yes, for sure.
No, but I do think, like, they were essentially – I think the loss of Arango is a little bit lessened from the fact that he kind of wasn't playing near what the idea of him was towards the end of the season,
That's
right?
fair.
Like they lose a player who had over 20 goal contributions. That's going to be tough to replace no matter what.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was kind of loaded so heavily in the front of the season makes it seem like the blow is a little bit less because they kind of did operate at still a decently high level. I think they finished 3rd last season. Yeah, with him not performing near that level. And I think the whole team's still going to have to take a step up. We're going to still have to see a lot of these players play better. And I think Diego Luna, like you said, it starts kind of with him. I think he will have to be the leading man. He will be the leading voice. He's, now got some USA experience under him.
He's got some big balls,
He's a confident guy. So, this is the year I think we hope to see him kind of go to that next level. And he's already at a very high level, to be clear. But I think this is the year we need to see him hitting, I don't know about 15 goals, but like, I don't know, 20 goal contributions total.
I was going to say, I think you want to see that. It doesn't need to be this amazing growth, but I think 16 goal contributions to 20 across all comps is fair. You have what seems to be a striker by committee, and I think underneath that is this group of Luna, Diogo Gunkalvish, Dominic Markzik, and Lachlan Brook, three of those guys who they brought in last summer, that are all probably expected, like, okay, you had half a season, you have a full off season, now you guys need to like play key pieces. And Markzik, I'm pretty sure he got a cap for Poland last summer. Like he's apparently supposed to be a pretty big, winger talent as well. And we saw flashes of it last year with RSL. Was it always there every single game? No, but he's a young player, so I'm not holding too much against him. The thing about this team that gives me a little bit confidence is I think this defense is you have Katranis, who I think was one of the best left backs last year. You have Brian Vera and Justin Glad, who are pretty long staples of this RSL backline. Andrew Brody, friend of the pod, dude's been there. He's been around MLS for a while. And then even behind that, I think a deep next line of defenders. You have Emeka and Nelly, and Jason, to your point of Diego Luna now having a little USMNT experience, and Nelly has that. You have Pablo Ruiz returning from injury, Brian Ojeda, Nelson Palacio. You have, I think, so much of a core defense that it's like you just now need to see, outside of Diego Luna, who else is going to answer the call. And dependent on who that is, or if that even happens, I think is the difference between RSL and a top 4 or 5 spot and RSL fighting for a lower tier playoff spot. Tell me if you think I'm wrong there.
No, I don't think you're wrong. And I think, like, I personally think, like, they were tied for second in goals for last season with 65. I don't think they're going to hit that this season. So I do think this defense is going to be relied upon more than it was. And it was great last season, but it made it easier when you were plus 17 in goal differential. So
unless Ariaf Piol is an absolute stud out of nowhere from the
A-League. That's a good one to mention too, because he's kind of like a question mark, and if he can put up 10 plus goals in his first MLS season, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah, look, my favorite thing about RSL is that they have this like tiny little pipeline, or not tiny, that's not the right word. They have this sneaky little pipeline from USL and the sneaky pipeline from like the A-League all of a sudden. And I love it. Like, just find the talent in the spots that maybe no one else is looking in. So I'm here for it. Jason, who is a player for you that if RSL, outside of Diego Luna, let's just say, that if RSL are gonna be top, closer to the top of the Western Conference, that you think he needs to be the man or step up?
Actually, one we already mentioned, which is Emeka Eneli. I'm looking to see him take another step. As a U.S. fan, I think, all of us kind of want to see another, what can we get out of him? What this isn't his final form at all. It doesn't seem like it. I want to see what growth can he get to. The guy is going to be playing more and more minutes as his career goes because he has clear talent. So I want to see how he can kind of assert himself into this team and actually make a bigger impact.
I'm looking at what I'm assuming is going to be his central midfield partner in Pablo Ruiz. If you've listened to the podcast in the last 3 years, I think I might be the biggest Pablo Ruiz fan out there. Like, I think he is such a great, excellent holding midfielder, but at the same exact time is so creative from a midfield block. Like, Goncalves and Luna are going to be asked to create a lot, but like Pablo Ruiz wasn't with this team all last year due to injury. And I think people forget, like, the dude can play a little bit up the field more. The dude can ping a ball and be a little bit creative. I love his game. I think he's a player. Obviously, I think he's had 2 big injuries in the past 3 years now. That's a concern. But if he's healthy, RSL, I think will be fine. So I'm just throwing out my Pablo Ruiz stock once again. Let's go to a rival of RSL. Let's go to the Colorado Rapids. Chris Armas in for his second season as manager. Some key players in this winter, re-signing Keegan Rosenberry and Oliver Larraz, trading for Chidozie Awaziem and Ian Murphy, and then obviously using the cash for player trade for Ted Kude-Pietro and signing Ali Fadal from Valencia B. Team didn't really lose a ton this offseason. Jasper Lawfulson, Jonathan Lewis, and Lalas Abubakar on the out. But Jason, this is Djordje Mihalovic's team, right? And we saw that last year. We saw Mihailovic be the captain, be the central piece. And we saw what this team didn't do or couldn't do with him not in the picture when we look at the MLS Cup playoffs last year. Does this team at this point have enough to compete for, I'm going to just go for a trophy in 2025 because they are in IKF Champions Cup. They are in Leagues Cup. They are in MLS action. Do you think the Rapids have elevated to a new level? Or is this maybe similar to what we saw in 2024?
Man, see, the way I want to answer this is maybe, but
it's fine. You can go for it. That's fine.
I think this team on paper is very talented. I think the signings or trade for Awaziem and Ian Murphy from Cincy are huge moves because this team sucked defensively. Like, to put it lightly, it was horrible. They were one of the worst defensive teams out of all.
Yeah.
I think they were the worst out of all teams who were actually in a playoff spot. I think Montreal was the only team worse than them in the East, but they were in the playing game. So, like, the defense is the issue here. Like, we know this team can score. We know what Mihailovic can do. I think bringing in Teddy Kude-Pietro is going to help the attack even more. But to me, it's the defense. If this defense can just be a little bit better, I mean, this team had a positive goal differential with 60 goals allowed. So, I mean, they had 61 scored, so a positive of 1. But that's still impressive for the fact that they allowed 60 goals all season. So my thing is that number, that goals against, needs to come down at least 10 for them to compete for a trophy, let alone win one.
I agree, and I think it's what we started seeing a little bit last year. I think the Djordje Mihailovic injury kind of messed things up tactically for Armas, but I think we might see this team go whatever it is, 5 in the back, 3 in the back, whatever you want to consider. Reggie Cannon was playing a little bit of a right center back in a back 3, which I think he can do, and he can do pretty well, and you still have Keegan Rosenberry and obviously the return of Sam Vines. This is going to be, for the most part, a completely new look defense from 2024. Yeah. You're replacing one starter at center back. You have Reggie Cannon and Sam Vines, who both came in towards the end of last year. Reggie Cannon hadn't played soccer for a little bit, so I'm sure he's, appreciating a full off season and getting fully vamped up. Same thing with Sam Vines. It's not, he notoriously had a few, concerns in Europe and didn't get registered for a roster and all this fun stuff, right? So I think this new look defense, I agree with you, Jason, is going to be the thing that determines whether the Rapids are real or not real in 2025. Obviously, you need Stefan to play a little bit better in net as well. But I agree. The player or the thing outside of that defense or even Djordje Mihailovic that I would just take note of is Cole Bassett. Cole Bassett, I think he ran the most miles of any player in MLS last year. The dude is such a talented player, and he's still on a U22 contract. I'm pretty sure he's still so young. I think Cole Bassett could be, if the Rapids are going to be successful and if that defense even plays slightly better, Cole Bassett could be such the transition guy that gets up into the attack a little bit, helps support the defense a little bit, helps maintain ball possession in the midfield, and could just be such a key piece outside of Djordje in that attack. So Seattle Sounders might be USMNT, but I think the Colorado Rapids might be USMNT, and I think they could be a team that is potentially winning a trophy in 2025. I'm not completely selling all of my my Colorado Rapids stock from last year, but Jason, is there a player outside of maybe Mihailovic, maybe even Cole Bassett that you think could be the reason why the Rapids are successful in 2025?
I'm going to continue with my defense for this team.
That's fair. It's fine.
And I'm going to pick Awaziem just because he's going from somewhat a bench player, spot starter, to essentially a full-time starter and going to be asked to do a lot. Like I said, this team wasn't good defensively. I think that they don't have time to figure it out on that back line, right? Like this team's almost an entirely new look back line, whether it was from injury or new players in general.
Yeah.
And so they're going to need them to really mesh right away. And I think Awazim is going to have to take that step up. That's it. I mean, this team had I forgot his name again. The Canadian.
Yeah, we're
2 for 2 on this one.
Yep, we're hitting home runs on the Canadian center back that went and is doing well in France, and we both love them. Yep, that is.
I'm looking it up again. It literally came up as my.
But look, either which way, Awazim. I think a big reason why the back three is even a conversation is because if you really look at the center back depth on this team, there's only 3 center backs if you don't consider Reggie Cannon one. So the back three actually makes a ton of sense.
Moise Bombito. Dude.
There you go, Moise Bombito, our guy.
I mean, he was top tier and they lost him, and their defense was horrible. So they're gonna need to replace decent defense.
They've been looking to replace him for a whole season now, so it makes sense. Okay, away from the Moise Bombito conversation, because we're still talking about him for the Rapids, is the Vancouver Whitecaps. Jesper Sorensen coming in his first season as manager for the Whitecaps. The team has done a little bit this offseason. They've re-signed Jason's guy Yohei Takeoka and Ralph Priso. They've signed Jaden Nelson along with Emmanuel Sabi in the last week. Shout out the one cap for the USMNT for Emmanuel Sabi. The players out this winter: Ryan Raposo, Fafa Pico, Alessandro Schopf, Diver Casido, and Stuart Armstrong. Obviously, Jason, this team to me is still Ryan Gauld's team. It's Ryan Gauld, it's Brian White, it's Pedro Vite and Andres Cubas, guys that we've known and seen around this roster for the last few MLS seasons now. Personally, I think this team has taken a major step back when you talk about what Fafa Pico provided, when you talk about what Stuart Armstrong provided, and sure, it was only 11 games, but he provided at a DP level. Ryan Raposo, a big part of that as well. I think this team is fine, but I think this team is in such a weird place. The club's for sale, new manager in this first year. How is he going to play? What's the team going to look like underneath him? There's a DP gone. I just think there's too many question marks for me to feel comfortable about the Vancouver Whitecaps.
I think the Vancouver Whitecaps have a good starting 11. I don't think there's much outside of that starting 11 though. Like I think it's a pretty big drop off to me. Like you said, Ryan Gauld, Brian White, they're going to score. Like this team's going to be competitive just because the talent on that starting 11 is there. There are good players, and we always see like Brian White and Ryan Gauld with 10 goals in like 3 games or whatever. So, I mean, if they can maybe balance out their scoring a bit, this might be better. But yeah, this team, I think, is in a tough spot simply because it just doesn't feel like the ownerships are committed to making this team better. So it kind of is what it is. This is what they have. This is what they have to work with. And so can they get the most out of it? Maybe. I do think the team is good. I just don't. The second Brian White gets hurt, the second Ryan Gauld gets hurt, there's no season for them. Like they just phone it in at that point.
I think you worded it in such a good way, actually. This is what they have to work with. And to me, it comes down to, can Jesper Sorensen get the most out of these guys? Like, what is he as a new manager going to get out of the top tier talent that is there, the Gaulds, the Whites? I'm even going to go Ranko Veselinovic, underrated, great center back in this league, and not a bunch of people I feel like watch the Whitecaps. If you do, Ranko Veselinovic, great center back. What's the consistency you're going to get from the names on this roster? And then can Sorensen also help the likes of Ali Ahmed, Sebastian Berhalter, guys like that, take that next step up in their own development and maybe go from youth player to, key roster player into, okay, producing at a high level with the rest of these guys. To me, a lot of it falls on Sorensen's in a tough spot. And if he can get the most out of these guys, to your point, this is what they're working with, then the Whitecaps will be back in a similar spot to where they were in 2024. But I think this could also go very poorly, and the Whitecaps can take some steps back, especially, one or two injuries, multiple competitions, all that fun stuff. You need depth, and you need the depth.
Yeah, they finished 8th. It's not like they were exceptional last season. So any downturn is not good for this team at all.
Exactly.
And I don't necessarily think they got much better. Maybe Sorensen, like you said, could get the most out of these guys, and then they did get better. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Portland Timbers. Phil Neville coming into his second season as manager of the Timbers. Some key players in the summer, signing Joao Ortiz, Jimmer Forey, Kevin Kelsey as well, and also re-signing Diego Chara. And then obviously the big news today, the Portland Timbers are trading Evander to FC Cincinnati for a reported fee of $12 million. And then with that, the Timbers are bringing in another DP for a reported fee of $6 million. David Da Costa, 24-year-old, the Portuguese attacking midfielder from Lens in Ligue 1. So a lot there, but I guess to finish out some of the moves, also some players gone this winter. Eric Williamson, Mason Toy, Marvin Loria. So Jason, new DP in town, Jonathan Rodriguez, Felipe Mora still there. Maybe a shift in formation just kind of makes sense to me, a back three here. I don't know. You weren't the biggest Phil Neville fan last year, and obviously they squeezed into the playoffs, and I don't know, similar to the Whitecaps, don't know how much better they got.
I think they got worse.
You lost.
You lost 30 goal contributions. It was nearly 50% of all their goals.
Yeah, and the team that was one of the worst defensive teams in all of MLS.
Yeah, and that's where like my player to watch for this team, and I'm going out of order, but it's Maxime Crepeau. Like he needs to have like a best 11 season for this team to be anywhere near competing. I don't love the team. I think it's sort of like it's weird for me because like Portland is one of those teams that you feel like is always going to compete, but it doesn't feel like they care. I don't know what it is. I don't know what your take on it is, but to me, when I look at this roster, I'm especially without Evander, which is how I did. I was assuming without Evander. Like it's just not great. Like I like Vancouver's starting 11 better than this starting 11.
I agree. The thing is, it's like I look at some of these pieces. I don't hate some of the pieces that the Timbers have. I think Jonathan Rodriguez was a fantastic signing last year, and I think he's a guy who can get you 15 goal contributions, in an MLS season. I like the profile of a Joao Ortiz that came in. He's an Ecuador international. He's been playing down in Ecuador, and I think he's probably going to step into a starting role on this roster. I like the profile of a David Da Costa, a guy that could potentially come in and maybe, I don't know if right off the bat, it's a weird late offseason move, but maybe even in 2026, be a high-end DP in this league. I like Kamal Miller. I like Maxime Crepeau. It's just the way that I think it all flows together. And then with what we saw from Phil Neville's team in year one, just leaves me with a ton of concerns. Juan David Mosquera and Claudio Bravo are some fantastic attacking fullbacks, not a defensive anchor. And I think that is a big piece as to why we saw the defensive issues that this team had in 2024. Diego Chara is no longer 33 years old and can run around like he used to. Like he is playing less and less minutes. This is a team that you're going to have to see a lot of these players, I think, step up in the defensive end if you want them to be good enough to make the playoffs. And I'm just saying make the playoffs. I'm not even saying finish closer to the top. I think the goals will still be there. I just am concerned, is there enough on the defensive side of the ball? And I'm going to assume and guess no. With that, just one player that I want to just say like could be a sneaky player to watch is Finn Sermon. He's a New Zealand youth international. I think he might have a few caps for the New Zealand national team. Apparently, a lot of people like his game. He could step up and be a really good young center back in this league. If he can, maybe he's a piece that helps kind of tie things together in the back line. I don't know, but maybe I think they're gonna hope that that he is for sure. So I think if you're a Timbers fan, you got to hope Jonathan Rodriguez and Felipe Mora can keep doing what they did last year. David DaCosta comes in and hits the ground running, and then you just see, a Finn Sermon, a Kamal Miller, guys like that across the back line, just like either take a step forward
or something. I don't, but
good.
like we just talked about Colorado, so it's easy to bring it up. Colorado, 60 plus goals for, 60 goals against. Portland, 65 goals for, 56 against. But Colorado fixed their issues, and Portland didn't. It essentially made it worse. They kind of stuck with the same defense that's allowed 56 goals last year, and then lost 30 goal contributions. And that's concerning. Like that's going from, oh, they were still, scoring a lot to, oh God, are they going to lose 4-1 now instead of 4-3? Like,
you lost the guy who won you games on his own and overcompensated for the fact that you allowed some awful goals.
And to be fair, it sounded like he didn't really want to be there any longer. So
yes,
it's not like he kind of strong-armed them into that.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, and it's not entirely Portland's fault that it's pretty much not Portland's fault at all that he's not there.
I'm sure maybe if the behind the scenes was a little bit better. We don't need to get into that, but
I mean, from what I've heard, he doesn't even want to be in the United States. So
Portland had to make the move, and I think we can all agree that you gotta move a player on that doesn't want to be there for whatever reasons that is. Austin FC. Now we're talking about teams outside of the playoffs. Austin FC hired Nico Estevez. This is going to be his first season as manager for the club. They've re-signed Danny Pereira. They've signed free agent Ilie Sanchez, signing Brandon Vasquez from Liga MX, Marto Izuni, Desard Sabovic, and Nicholas Dubersarski. Ooh, that was a lot of names, a lot of different cultures in that group. Key players out this winter: Sebastian Driussi, Giassi Zardes, Alexander Ring, Matt Hedges, and Johan Valencia. A lot of veterans, a lot of older talents in that group there. Jason, this front office and this club obviously broke their transfer record twice this offseason. But do you think a heavy price tag front line gets Austin back into the playoff picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they completely invested everything into their starting line. They were not good in attack last season on a team that was pretty good defensively. Like I wrote down, it's just funny because I didn't even bring it up till now, but I literally added up all the goals in the league from last season and then averaged it out again by conference. So basically the average goals scored per team was like 53.5. That's full season. Or every team. Yeah, for the East, it was like 52.4, and for the West, it was 54.7. I think slightly because there was one less team. Regardless, Austin was at 39, which is, if I go back and look, it's basically the worst in the league outside of Nashville and New England, who we all know their issues. So that's not a good place to be. I think bringing in Bukhari, bringing in Uzuni, and having Vasquez come in, like those are guys that you need to just suddenly go off. And I think they all have the ability to. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be tough, but I think they fixed what they needed to fix because to me, the defense was among kind of league average.
It was fine. Yeah.
I didn't average out like goals against, but 48 goals against. If you just look at basically playoff teams, that's right on par with most of these playoff teams, outside of like some exceptionally good defenses like Houston or Charlotte that's really Seattle. But regardless, like the goals is what they need to upgrade. So I'm completely fine. I think a lot of times it's like, ooh, you put all your DPs in one group. That's not a great idea, but I think in this case it actually is a great idea because it's a huge need for them.
I agree with that, right? Like, I think the defense, I'm not saying I was blown away. I love it, but Brad Stuver in net continuously is such a strong keeper and makes some key saves. And I think you even help bolster the defense a little bit with the Ilie Sanchez signing, right? Ilie is in his mid-30s now. I'm not saying he's moving like he was with SKC or even early LAFC days, but I think you pair him next to an Owen Wolf, a Danny Pereira, one of the other central midfielders that they brought in this offseason. And I think Ilie can be a relatively strong, central lower midfielder type player. Azuni, I think, should ball out. I think Brandon Vasquez, we know what he can do and the amount of goals he can score. I think Bukhari's only going to get better because of that. Obviously, the big question mark to me is like, are they just going to rely on all the creativity from that as well? Like, who behind them is going to create? Does Owen Wolf step up as more of a 10 creative piece? Is it Diego Rubio playing maybe a false 9? Is he a 10? Is he going to just be the backup striker and they're going to hopefully rely upon a little bit more of possession in the midfield? That's my only question, is just creativity outside of that front three, but maybe the creativity in that front three is enough. I don't know.
Maybe that front three is dragging the defense so far back that the midfield has a lot more space.
I mean, it's 100% fair. I think Austin's a very interesting team in 2025. I think it could be really fun, or it could be there is still some major gaps in the rest of the team that even with this fun attacking three, like they're not holding possession.
I think it'll be both. I think it'll be really fun regardless, because I think it's just like a fun built team.
100%.
But like whether they are super successful or not, I think it'll be fun regardless.
Is there a player that you're looking at, Jason, that you're like could be the difference in Austin being a playoff team? Or I think even some people have them close to the top of the West, which is interesting. But
I don't know where I have them yet.
Who is a player that stands out to you that you're like could be a game changer in Austin?
This is the one where I just picked a star because I think Brandon Vasquez coming back to MLS. We need to see him get back to that MLS form that he was in, where he was one of the best number 9s in the league. So he's the one, you can talk about like the rest of this team, but I think that front three in general is where they put all their money. If we're not getting production out of that, then it's sort of a loss.
I'm going to go Danny Pereira. I know I wrote down a different name, but I'm going to go Danny Pereira because as I'm thinking about this more, you have...
I'm not fact-checking your names, don't worry.
It's fine. In case you were looking. You have two new central midfielders who are new to the league. You have Ilie Sanchez, who's, again, in his mid-30s. Diego Rubio, who I don't even know if he's going to play in the midfield. I just kind of think he can. Owen Wolf, who's still a very young, homegrown central midfielder. Danny Pereira at this point is in his prime Venezuelan international central midfielder. He's going to be asked to do a lot, to hold possession, to get forward into the attack a little bit as well. And I think if he is playing at a very high level, he'll be a key piece to connect things for that attack as well. So I'm going Danny Pereira as my under the radar player to watch. All right. Let's stay in Texas. Let's finish up with the last Texas team, FC Dallas. Eric Quill coming in as his first season as manager of the club. It's been a very interesting offseason for FC Dallas. They have this week traded for or signed a cash for player trade, however we want to fucking word this. Lucho Acosta, 30-year-old attacking midfielder, former MLS MVP, is coming over from Cincinnati to Dallas for a reported fee of $5 million. So that is the big signing this offseason, but they obviously also re-signed Logan Farrington, Sabaling, Sebastian Lletget, trading for Anderson Julio, Shaq Moore, and Leo Chu. They signed Romero Benetti, Lalas Abubakar, and they also brought in Patrickson Delgado on a full-time deal. This team has also lost a lot. Alan Velasco, Jesus Ferrara, Paul Arriola, and Kosi Tafari, Juan, Asier Ilamorende, Liam Frazier, Omar Gonzalez, Dante Sealy, just to name a few players that have come in and out of this roster. Jason, FC Dallas, man, I don't even know. Like, I was so down on them about 2 days ago, and then I'm like, and here comes Lucho Acosta. Here comes a former MVP, a dude who was an MVP finalist last year. This team still has Peitar Musa up top, who was very good last year. I don't even know what to think about Dallas. The questions that I wrote down for Dallas are just.
I'm glad we're in the same boat because I also did this before the Lucho news hit, and I'm like, I don't really want to go back and do it again because originally I was like, they didn't get better. If anything, they got way worse. Like, this isn't a good team. I don't know. Like, I don't think just bringing in Lucho is going to transform this team into some like powerhouse. I think
I agree.
The problem I have is like there's no depth in that back line. Like I put down as like a under the radar player like Nolan Norris because I think maybe there's a chance he comes into this team. And
don't get me started on Nolan Norris hype. Dude has been a standout youth national.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe there's a chance he comes in and he's the person. I think he's going to play a decent amount of minutes. The kid's like 19 years old. Like, that's what they're relying on is crazy.
I mean, look, that is the Dallas way, though, that eventually the youth national team product has to step up.
But, yeah, I mean, you could literally name half this team as like under the radar.
I'm so happy that you mentioned Nolan Norris, but yes,
he's the one I wrote down for both the questions you had. Like, I think he can step up, and I think he's an under the radar player because I just think the defense is the one that's like what are they going to get out of Lalas Abubakar? What are they going to get out of some of these guys? It's not that it's a thin line. It's not.
I'm going to go with this, Jason. I'm going to give a quick 30-second speech on Dallas, my thoughts about Dallas, and then a player that I'm going to say could be a game changer. And I'm going to leave it at that for my Dallas take and talk.
Diego Pepe, isn't it?
Diego Pepe. I think this team has a top-of-the-line striker, has a top-of-the-line attacking midfielder in Peitar Musa and Lucho Acosta, and I think they have one of the best goalkeepers in the league in Martin Paz. You have names that have been veterans of this league for a while, a Marco Farfan, a Lalas Abubakar, a Shaq Moore, Anderson Julio, even Leo Chu, Sebastian Lletget, Sabeling, all the guys like that are fine, I think, are just going to bring MLS veteran know-how. To me, it's which youth products step up. Is it is it Logan Farrington in year 2? Is it a Tariq Scott or a Pedrinho out on the wing? Is it Nolan Norris stepping up at center back? Those are the questions for me. Does the youth products that they signed mixed with the MLS veteran know-how, mixed with, I'm going to say, 3 top-of-the-line starters, is that enough to get Dallas into the playoff picture? And I don't know. And the last thing I'll say, the new center back that they just signed this week from Amiens in the French second division, Osaze or Hogide. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
I was thinking of saying most of the names, and I don't really need to.
He is a French. He's a French center back, 24 years old. Again, coming over from Amiens. He has played at Celtic before. He has 20 games played for Amiens this year in the French second division. If he can step up and turn almost into like an Adelson Malanda-esque, I know Malanda came over younger, but like an Adelson Malanda-esque type center back. I'm just comparing him to Malanda because he's a French center back. But if he can almost be by the end of the season, like a stalwart center back at 24 years old, 25 years old, whatever he's going to be by the end of the year, mixing that with a Nolan Norris, Shaq Moore, like then I get way more confident. And I think Dallas could be a playoff team. Now you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket of a guy coming over, but
Dallas is going to they're one of those teams where if you told me they fast forward, you're from the future or something, and you're like, yeah, they finished 5th. I'd be like, oh, okay. Or if you're like, they finished 14th, I'd be like, okay,
fifth is wild. I'm not gonna
maybe too high, but like you get the point. Like there's a huge range of where this team could actually finish.
Yes. Anything else on Dallas before we move on?
Let's move on.
All right, St. Louis City first
Also,
season.
what 3 new managers in a row was fun.
Well, I mean, again, if you're missing the playoffs, kind of makes sense that you have a new manager. And we're going to go with another new manager here, Olaf Melberg, first season as manager of St. Louis City. This club has re-signed Chris Durkin and Indiana Vassilev, and they also went out and signed Timo Baumgartner and Conrad Wallem. Out this winter, not too many names, but Jake Nerwinski, Jose Kojima, and they've also loaned out Selmir Pedro and Nokvi Thorson. This is, and I said this to Joe Lowry when I had him on a few weeks ago. This is if like a 2 Bundesliga all-star team could get put together and play in MLS. This is what St. Louis City is, and I am so excited for it because I think with what we saw down the stretch from St. Louis, it was just a little too late in terms of the summer signings coming in and getting acclimated. I think St. Louis are going to be a ton of fun if Melbourne can get them to play.
I think their summer signings got acclimated faster than I think many people probably thought would happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I think
Teutschert and Hartl were just contributing goals at pleasure.
Yeah, and Baumgartner, he was a summer signing too, right?
No, Baumgartner came in this winter. You're talking. You were talking.
One of them was a defender. I thought. Maybe I'm wrong.
Was it Giannis Horn? Sorry, Giannis.
Oh,
Horn.
okay. Honestly, I think this team does the standings and the I like to look at past goal differential and all that. I don't know if it's really appropriate for this team at all.
It's because it is. I think if you could somehow, and I'm sure there's places out there, if you could just somehow get from what the post-summer transfer window to the beginning of the MLS Cup playoffs.
I mean, there's a form chart that I looked at, and I'm like, it's not giving me the info I want it to be giving.
I'm just saying this is a team that there's a lot. This is a front office that likes players from the Scandinavian region and the German lower divisions, right? You have a lot of guys who have even played together a ton. Edward Lowen has played with Cedric Teutschert in the past, and it's such a cohesive group that I think the talent alone is impressive, but I think the cohesion already with the talent is something that I'm like St. Louis could explode in 2025.
Yeah, I think they will.
Give me a name, Jason, of someone that you're.
Yeah, so mine is Edward Lowen. I think from the season where they were really good 2 years ago, 6 goals, 9 assists that year. He regressed quite a bit, as much like the whole team kind of did last year. He went to 5 goals, 3 assists. I think the assist number is pretty crucial here. Went from 9 to 3 over the course of that season, or over the 2 seasons. I'm looking at him thinking, how can he go back to producing? And even if he's not producing big numbers, I think just having Hartlett and Teutschert in front of him are going to make a huge difference. So I look at him as someone, I think if he can get back to he was one of the better, I feel like, midfielders that season. If he can get back there and become another force, then this team will continue to just be great.
I will just say this, and I don't know how much you know about Edward Lowen's off the field stuff, Jason. His wife got diagnosed with brain cancer last year, so he took an extended leave away. I think she's doing better. I'm gonna knock on wood, and prayers still out to the Lowen family. I think that's part of the reason why he probably regressed.
Probably, yeah, that would have been good to know.
that's a I don't know if I've told you, so hand up my bed there on that. But still, I think it's, even if it wasn't like that, right? I think even just there's always going to be regressions and flows with it. And St. Louis was playing at such a high level 2 years ago that it makes sense that anyone from Lowen to whoever was there from year 1 to year 2 might have regressed a little bit. So I think it's the piece of, how is Olaf Melberg going to get these guys playing to the level that he wants? What does that kind of baseline look like? And then, Edward Lowen is a guy who I think
is such a key piece, is such a big time player. And if he's playing like what he was 2 years ago, St. Louis is going to be so good outside of the attacking numbers of a Simon Betcher, Marcel Hartel, and Teuchert and all of that, right? And I think defensively, this team has brought in a lot. I'm expecting a back three with them, and Roman Berkey's still there, net balling out. So there's a lot I think to be excited about. For me, I just want to quickly mention Indiana Vassilev. We talked about with RSL, right? Emeka and Nelly. Diego Luna getting a little bit of USMNT experience. Indiana Vassilev, also one of those guys that was called up in January. Maybe he rides a little bit of that confidence there. But that is St. Louis City. Jason, let's go to Sporting Kansas City.
We have to.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Kansas City fans.
Peter Vermees is still there, Jason. His 16th full season as manager of the club. This offseason, they did a lot, right? They brought in Manu Garcia and Shapi Suleimanov. They also brought in Mason Toy, and they used the cash for player trade for former LA Galaxy striker Dejan Joveljic. They've re-signed Steven Afrifa, Willie Agata, Logan Ndembe, Memo Rodriguez, and Robert Volader. And then on the out was Alan Polito, Remy Voltaire, Johnny Russell, Tim Melia, and Andreu Fontas. It's almost the same conversation that I feel like we have every year about Sporting Kansas City is it just another rebuild of Peter Vermees' guys, right? You still have some of that core pieces there that just kind of switches over from year to year. Now I feel like the core is Radoja, Danny Rosero, and Daniel Shalali. Now, how do the new guys fit in of Dejan Joveljic, Manu Garcia, Shapi Shalamanov, and guys like that, right? Who takes the step forward? Jake Davis and Robert Volader and all of that. This is a team that I think if certain pieces hit to the level that some people are saying, like a Manu Garcia, Sporting Kansas City could be in the playoffs again. If not, it could just be another year of Sporting Kansas City are just, what are we doing here? Year after year, what are we doing? But I don't know what you feel about SKC.
I think the investment in Joveljic, like, personally, wasn't the most necessary spot to put that money. I think, like, and this is why I took the average for goals in the Western Conference, because I was curious, because they had 51 goals, which was like 3 short of the average. The goals for aren't the biggest issue here. I think it was that defensive side of things.
Yeah.
But scoring over 50 goals and still having a minus 15 goal differential, if we take out San Jose's just abysmal numbers, and even New England's were also just insane, that's horrible. Like, minus 15 goal differential is not getting you anywhere. And I think maybe Joveljic helps out. I don't think Pulido, had a good 2024. But I don't know where this team's going necessarily. Like, I feel like the rebuilds are kind of like fake rebuilds, like half-assed rebuilds, not full rebuilds.
I can understand that.
So to me, it's like, could they be good? Yeah, but you really have had to have hit, you really need the Joveljic from last season's Galaxy, which I not to take anything from him, but I still think, like, having Paintsel, Peck, Puig, even Marco Royce coming in, like, you're bringing in a lot better players around him than what this Sporting Kansas City team has. So, and
that's why I say, like, if Manu Garcia is an elite number 10, which we don't know, right? That's the question mark. Joveljic could have a great season, but then again, to your point,
but even if he is elite, like, it's not.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, is he going to be Ricky Puig MVP level elite? Maybe.
Could be.
But I don't think like Afrifa and Shallow are going to be Peck and Paintsel levels.
This is the thing that I agree with you that every year, and this is why I say we have the same conversation on SKC. SKC, I agree that it's like a half-ass rebuild every single year. It's not ever, I feel like, the money put in the right places, and it's just like, ooh, like, here's the shiny toy of Dejan Joveljic, and we have, potentially Robert Volader playing center back, and no shot at him. It's just, how is he different from any center back?
Because he was going to be my.
And it's not that I think Robert Volader is a bad center back. He's young still, which is a key piece to talk about him.
but they have not had a good center back since Ike Opara left. They have not had a good center back since Matt Besler retired. Like, let's just be honest. Like, Danny Rosero is a good center back, but am I going to put him at any type of level of talking about the best center backs in MLS? No, I'm not. No. So it's, to me, I have so many questions. It seems half-assed. Because is Manu Garcia an elite DP level 10 or not? Is Eric Tommy playing in the central midfield? Is he playing out on a wing? Is Jake Davis playing right back, or is he playing central midfield? If he's playing central midfield, is Kyrie Shelton your starting right back option? What is going on? And that's just how I feel. And there's a certain point where it's like, okay, we're not going to know until games are played. But if I'm an SKC fan, I would have liked to have seen another center back. I would have liked to have seen a right back signed. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more depth in the central midfield and that. But you mentioned Voltaire is your player to watch or under the radar player to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Voltaire, he's gotten more minutes every season he's played, and this is now his fourth full season with the team.
He came in super young.
He honestly is like going to be one of the leaders in this team, it feels like to me. And that's sort of why I put him down. It's like, as far as this defense goes, he's kind of going to have to be one of those voices and one of those people that gets this team together. And he's increased minutes every year. Like, I expect him to play almost the full season. Like, I don't know. I don't really have a lot to say about Sporting Kansas City, just from the fact that I don't really get what they're trying to do, because to me it's like you said, they bring in the shiny toy and Jovic and then hope for the best, I guess, or just like be bad.
It's funny because the player that I went with that I feel like needs to step up if SKC is going to be successful is Joaquin Fernandez, one of the other center backs on this roster.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I felt like that was because Fernandez came in last summer as a summer signing, and Sporting Kansas City signing a veteran center back in the summer, shocker. Like, they do it every single year. And he didn't really play because apparently I was reading somewhere he came in a little out of shape from the European season because he wasn't really playing over in Europe and blah, 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 right? So Fernandez coming in, he's a guy who's played in La Liga. He's a guy who's played in the Turkish, first division, some leagues that we've seen success in players coming over from. Maybe a full off season of getting fit, getting ready. He could be a starting center back pairing next to Danny Rosero or rotating in with Robert Voltaire. So if he can maybe come in with some of the skill level that his resume would, people would argue he's coming in with, he could be a center back piece that, like, okay, maybe help shape out things a little bit. So he was my pick, but we will have to see because he also didn't really show too much last year. Last two teams of the Western Conference here, Jason. San Jose Earthquakes. Bruce Arena is back in MLS, and it is his first season as manager of San Jose. This winter, they have brought in Christian Arango via trade, Dave Romney, Ian Harkes, Mark-Anthony Kaye, them all in via trade from New England. They've signed Josef Martinez and Nick Lima via free agency, and they also re-signed Daniel in net. Some key players out: Jeremy Abobasi, Carlos Gruezo, Emi Ochoa, Jackson Yule, Carlos Akakbo, Alfredo Morales, and Tanner Beeson, all gone. Jason, the Earthquakes are playing one of the lightest schedules in all of MLS. They're just in MLS and the U.S. Open Cup, which is just a 5-game tournament if you win the entire thing. They have Bruce Arena in, who has rebuilt entire organizations before. We saw it with the Revs, and they won, a supporter shield and a points record there. Do you think the Quakes could be back in 2025 or beyond?
What's back? Just competitive? Or?
Back as in, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go the Quakes days of them winning MLS Cup in the mid 2000s, but
I think this team is going to be better, but the bar is so insanely low. I think where they were at was honestly unacceptable for a professional team in any sport. It was insane.
Yeah, I agree.
I think a lot of the changes are great changes on paper, and I think Bruce Arena, we've seen him do this before. We've seen him make a team competitive. I don't know if it'll be this year. I personally think it probably will take more than a year to make this team competitive.
I agree. I
like some of the moves. I think the key is the Chicho Arango. there were two halves. I mean, we've talked about it nonstop. There was two halves of his season last year. I don't think they need the player from the first half or the second. Well, anyone would take the player from the first half of the season. My point is, they need him. They need, what was it, like 20 goals and, I don't know, 12 assists or something. I think I wrote it. I don't know if I wrote it down. Basically like 30 goal contributions 30 plus.
Yeah.
They need that spaced out over the whole season instead of like front loaded, because if he can be consistent, I mean, I think this team's way more competitive than it was. It essentially was just like a scheduled loss every single time.
I like to think about Arango on this roster a little differently, because you have Christian Espinoza, who's been such a good DP over the years. You have Hernan Lopez, who was a transfer record for this club last year. Amal Pellegrino showed flashes, and you still have Josef Martinez on this roster to help maybe supplement some minutes off Arango as well. That, Josef Martinez scored 12 goals last year. Yeah. I'm not gonna ignore that, So I think that he might have a better overall rotation around him right now than what he had the second half of the season last year with RSL, which is kind of wild to say. But
yeah, it is kind of wild to say. But
I think it's true, and I would argue that with anyone. But I think he could be in a much better spot, and then obviously you have Bruce Arena that he knows how to win. So I agree with you on the Arango. I think Arango is a key piece, is maybe the biggest piece to all of this. Anything else on San Jose?
I will just mention Amal Pellegrino, because I think this guy on just an astronomically bad team still had 7 goals and 2 assists last season. And now he has Arango in the middle to be passing to. So I think his numbers should go up quite a bit, hopefully, for them. But he'd be one that I watch for jumping in improvement.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with my key piece is anyone on the back line that wants to step up under Bruce.
Wants to play defense on this team.
This was a league record worst defense in 2024. The only additions that Bruce Arena has made is Dave Romney and Nick Lima. I think Dave Romney's a very good center back. I don't know if Nick Lima at this point is a starting caliber right back. I know Bruce Arena likes his guys, and they will most likely be starting at half of this back line. It's going to be, does Bruce Arena do the Bruce Arena thing where he just elevates talent? And can it be Rodriguez, Bruno Wilson, Daniel Mooney, Vitor Costa, Paul Marie, whoever it is that steps up and helps, just be so much better than what the 2024 Earthquake defense was. So that is my concern, but also I think whoever Bruce Arena can tap the potential into, I'm here for. Last team, Jason, almost said San Jose, San Diego FC, Mikey Varis coming in, first season as manager of this organization's first ever season. Some key players in this winter: Andres Reyes, Marcus Ingvartsen, Chucky Lozano, Patty McNair, Luca De La Torre, Anders Dreyer. Some key players out, and yes, there were some players out. Jose Kojima traded after being selected in the expansion draft. Thiago Andrade traded at being picked in the expansion draft, and then goalkeeper Duran Ferry going on loan to Nordjylland in Scandinavia. At this point, my brain's fried, people. But San Diego, Jason, the biggest thing for me is it was hard to come up with questions around them, because the question around an expansion team for me is always just, what do they look like? Who plays where? What does Mikey Varis prioritize, and what doesn't he? Is it a back 3? Is it a back 4? Do they want to press? Do they want to hold possession? It's such a question mark to me that it's tough talking about this team until a ball is kicked. And we're seeing it a little bit in the preseason, and I think you see a lot of these guys figuring it out, but it's a lot of new faces to the league, to a city, to getting used to things. I don't know. What are your thoughts around what we've kind of seen, I guess, from San Diego so far?
I think what you're saying is right. It's difficult to say what they're going to look like necessarily on the field. I can only speak to how they were kind of constructed, which in my opinion was a really interesting and good way of doing it, where they got their more stretch players, where you got Chucky Lozano, Marcus Ingvartsen, Anders Dreyer, like you went for some bigger names, Luca De La Torre, some guys who were either new to MLS or high profile names that are coming in that you can expect a lot from. And then you took that back line and you got Andres Reyes, Chris McVeigh, two experienced MLS defenders, and Patrick McNair, who has like 250 games played in the championship. So, like, I think what they did was really interesting to me. I think with any new team, depth is an issue. What are these players actually going to look like together can be an issue. I think they kind of tried to work with that by getting Chucky Lozano before pretty much anyone else. I think that was kind of a wise decision. So I'm assuming whoever's evaluating talent was trying to pick pieces around him. So I think there's a lot of good movement and choices that they made. It's hard to say. Like, I think this team is going to be competitive. I don't think it's going to be just like a walkover team every week. I just don't know, because I think the Western Conference is actually pretty damn good. Like,
it's going to be traversing year one of a new club, new organization. And I think if San Diego want to be successful, they need to fall back on an experienced defense and one that knows the league and just knows how to play, right? Like you said, Patty McNair, no, he's not experienced in MLS, but he's experienced over 200 games in the championship. He's played for Man United. He was the captain of Northern Ireland. Like, he is as experienced as what you're going to bring into this league. Chris McVeigh and Andres Reyes know this league. Jasper Lawfulson and Annabelle Godoy know this league, right? Like, you need to fall back, I think, on the leadership of guys who have been around and who can kind of right the ship, especially if goals aren't going in or things aren't going right. And then, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Chucky Lozano's shoulders. And I think that's just something that he signed up for.
Territory.
And as I say, he signed up for and comes with the territory. So I'm excited to see what San Diego looks like. But I agree with you, Jason. The Western Conference is tough. And in saying that, are you ready to run through our 1 through 15?
Let's do it.
Let's start from the bottom and go up. I'm gonna be typing in yours as we go. So, Jason, who do you have slotted for 15th in the Western Conference?
I have Sporting Kansas City.
Wow. Okay, Sporting Kansas City in 15th for Jason. I have San Diego in 15th. I just, new team is what it is. Jason, who do you have for four? I'll go first. I have the Portland Timbers in 14th. Who do you have in 14th?
I have San Diego. I have San Diego.
Okay.
Wait, no. I had Portland. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have San Diego in 13th.
And I have SKC in 13th. So, you know what? We have a similar bottom three, and I think it makes sense. For, 12th, I have FC Dallas. Who do you have in 12th?
Oh, man, what did I do?
Jason did not number his list here, people.
No, I kind of did, but I changed it so many times that I'm trying to look at what I have. Okay, so you said you had Dallas in 12th. I rewrote everything. Oh, I have San Jose in 12th.
San Jose in 12th. Okay, who do you have in 11th, Jason?
Real Salt Lake.
Oh, you have RSL lower than me by a good amount. In 11th, I have the Vancouver Whitecaps. In 10th, I have San Jose. Who do you have in 10th?
I have Vancouver.
Okay. Not too far off from me there. Who do you have in 9th?
I have Dallas.
Okay. I have RSL in 9th. So we're pretty much rocking a similar 9 through 15. Okay.
Pretty much, but none of them are in the same spot, are they?
No, I don't think so.
That's actually funny.
In 8th, I have the Houston Dynamo.
I have Colorado.
Okay. Who do you have in 7th?
I have Austin.
I have Austin in 7th as well. I think that's our first similar pick there. In 6th, I have Colorado. Who do you have?
I have Houston.
Okay, we just swapped Houston.
In 5th, I have St. Louis.
I have St. Louis in 5th as well, Jason. I have the Galaxy in 4th.
Yep, I have the Galaxy in 4th.
Who do you have in 3rd?
LAFC.
You have LAFC in 3rd. I have Minnesota in 3rd. I'm going to assume you have Minnesota in 2nd.
Yep.
And then Seattle 1. Okay.
Yep.
I think we're pretty similar. And again, I don't get upset by that.
We have similar blocks. Like our top 5 are the same teams, kind of.
The bottom 6 are the same teams.
Yeah.
and then there's just the middle ground of, I guess, whatever the difference is. There's just that block. Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's hard. It's difficult. We just talked for an hour and 50 minutes. I'm not dragging this on too much longer. Folks, thank you. I'm going to try to put timestamps in for every single spot that we start talking about your team. So if you only want to listen to the quick preview of your team, there you go. But Jason, thank you so much. Guys, thank you for watching, listening. Eastern Conference is next week, so get ready.